Ahsoka was a show that I was heavily anticipating coming out on Disney Plus ever since it was announced at D23, ever since I saw Rosario Dawson appear as Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian Season 2, and now here we are. All 8 episodes are now available for you guys to stream right now on Disney Plus. And I gotta tell you, both me and my girlfriend had a blast with this thing. And as someone who is a humongous geek and a huge fan of Star Wars, this is a series that made me incredibly happy. Judging from the title, we follow who else? Ahsoka Tano, played once again by Rosario Dawson. She's investigating an emerging threat to the galaxy following the fall of the Empire. So just in terms of where we are in the timeline, in between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, right around the same time The Mandalorian's going on. And I think it goes without saying, just looking at these press photos, just looking at the makeup design, looking at the CGI, and just looking at the overall atmosphere and the environment, the off-world locations, it is still breathtaking to be transported to a galaxy far, far away. Anything with the Star Wars IP, I'm stoked for. But it's not just the overall production design, because if it has Star Wars in the title, that should go without saying. That should be expected. It's all about how the characters are all fleshed out, and it's all about the story, because I feel like when it comes to the Star Wars fandom, you have people who are a bit more casual like myself who will enjoy it no matter what. But then there's the hardcore fan base who seem to want to write the entire sequel trilogy and they'll just find every plot hole imaginable. And yes, even though there are a lot of flaws with the sequel trilogy, which I definitely agree with, I found those enjoyable. I'm sorry. But thankfully, we've had TV shows that have gotten all sorts of universal acclaim from every member of the fandom. Once The Mandalorian hit streaming in 2019, everybody was hooked. They could not get enough of this guy. And now here we are. We've gotten a few Star Wars series up to this point. 3 whole entire seasons of The Mandalorian. The Book of Boba Fett, which is pretty mediocre in the grand scheme of things. It's not necessarily focused on Boba Fett, but once The Mandalorian comes into the picture, that's when the show gets really good. And then, of course, you have a prequel series in Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, I'll be honest, I really dug that show too. You can call it gloriously bad all you want. I really enjoyed it. And I think I can safely say that with the story that we're presented in Ahsoka, we're getting the best Star Wars series since The Mandalorian hit the scene. I loved every single minute of this. Yes, you are going to have tie-ins to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy/universe, if you will. Yes, there will be references to other pieces of this property. But for those of you who've been following the Marvel formula since 2008, that's just going to be the nature of the beast. As far as story goes, and if you're a fan of Clone Wars, if you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, I feel like Ahsoka is going to make you incredibly happy. And that's also because the translation of animation into live action, unlike what Disney is putting out in theaters with remakes most of the time, this one is just like, it's pitch perfect. The casting of Rosario Dawson is absolutely pitch perfect here. I feel like I said this when she first appeared in Mandalorian Season 2. I absolutely adored her. I absolutely loved how badass she was. And we get a lot more of that in this series. And she easily has the biggest emotional arc out of every character we meet, which honestly should be the case, because her name is in the title. It should be all about her and her inner turmoil. And my god, I don't want to get too deep into spoilers in case you haven't seen it, but her inner turmoil is so interesting, and just how it affects every single character around her. Especially Sabine Ren, who is awesome here. I mean, just seeing Ahsoka Tano in live action, it just makes me so happy, guys. It makes me so happy. Now, Sabine Ren in this is played by Natasha Bordizzo. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. But yeah, a lot of her story elements in this series kind of reminds you a lot of how Finn was built up in The Force Awakens. Because she's a Mandalorian and graffiti artist, she's an Imperial Academy dropout, a former bounty hunter. She's got a lot in her background. But now here she is kind of under Ahsoka's apprenticeship. She's learning how to become a Jedi now. And granted, yes, similar to Finn, that transformation into a Jedi Knight does not happen for Sabine Ren overnight. But yeah, again, the translation of Sabine Ren from Rebels into live action, it's absolutely seamless, and Bordizzo is so freaking awesome in this part. I loved her. She was such a badass. As was Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I've always found to be wonderful. She's playing Captain Harrison Doula. The makeup on her is so good. And I don't want to say that she's the weakest character because I don't want to say I cared the least about her every time they showed her and her storyline. Because it's still really good, don't get me wrong. But I don't think her arc was nearly as interesting as the stuff with Sabine Ren or Ahsoka herself. Or even more so, Balin Skull, the villain of this. My god, this guy's ice cold. And this guy kind of follows under the tutelage of Anakin Skywalker, kind of going over to the dark side. This is a former Jedi as well, who survived Order 66. And now his main goal is basically trying to find this map in order to find his way towards Ezra Bridger. Which, yes, for those of you keeping score at home, yeah, that's exactly like Luke Skywalker's whole arc in The Force Awakens. Because you have a missing piece of the map, you have to find R2-D2 to get to that map. Luke hid it somewhere, the good guys and the bad guys are all looking for Luke's location. Yeah, it definitely sounds very similar. But again, it's the production value, the immersiveness of this world, and the performances that make this all worthwhile to me. Balin Skull is played by the late Ray Stevenson, and he was such a great talent. May he rest in peace. It's so sad because this guy died right before this series actually premiered. So it's so sad that he can't enjoy the full fruits of his labor, because some have argued that this was the best work of his entire career. It's a hard point to argue against, man, because I absolutely loved his character. I loved all these characters that they brought back from Rebels, because again, seeing these animated characters come to form in live action was so exciting to watch. David Tennant returns to reprise his role as Hu Yang. He's a lightsaber crafting droid, and oh my god, he was so funny. There's a whole sequence where he's giving a character recommendations on how to build a lightsaber. I think it's only a matter of time before we see that droid inside the building where you can actually build your own lightsaber at the Disney parks. I mentioned that Ezra Bridger is a part of this series, and I don't know if that's a huge spoiler, but when he does appear, oh my god, this put a humongous smile on my face. The reunion he has with Sabine, the reunion he has with Ahsoka, the performance by Eman Esfandi, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, but oh my god, this guy was so cool. I love his dialogue and I love him in the action sequences. He is such a badass. In general, the action sequences in this entire series are beautiful to look at. They are so well helmed. There is no shaky cam to be found. The lightsabers bring a lot of bright color into the mix and a lot of great contrast between good and evil. In a sense, Star Wars at its finest. Now, one other character that pops up from the Rebels TV show that I failed to mention up to this point, Grand Admiral Thrawn shows up. He's played here by the very imposing Lars Mikkelsen, again reprising his role from Rebels. And I love how Mikkelsen plays this. He's so formidable because he's always thinking like 8 or 9 steps ahead of his opponents. And he doesn't have to be a Jedi, and he doesn't have to use the Force to really have an advantage over his adversaries. Like, as soon as you see this guy come into frame and you see his makeup and his glowing red eyes, you know that you're in trouble. So great to see him as well. As was the case with the one and only Hayden Christensen reprising his role as Anakin Skywalker. My god, he was so awesome in this series too. Similar to how he was in Obi-Wan Kenobi. He didn't really get a whole lot of face time because he was behind a mask a lot of the time in that series. But now he is letting his dramatic chops come out full force. Episode 5 just may be my favorite in the entire series. The fact that he's taking Ahsoka through Clone Wars flashbacks, the little teeny tiny glimpses that you see of Darth Vader in those flashbacks are so creepy. And the eventual duel that he has with Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds or whatever it was called. It was so thrilling, so white knuckle, but there were so many character layers just in those interactions between those two, because Anakin was Ahsoka's mentor. My goodness, it was just like every single part of it was so freaking compelling. Now, the first couple of episodes definitely kind of got off to a bit of a slow start, but I'm the type of person that when I watch a TV show, I don't really need all the answers right away. Like, as long as I'm immersed in this world and as long as I'm into these characters and the performances, I don't need all the answers right away. And that was the case with Ahsoka. I absolutely dug this series. If you haven't caught a glimpse of it on Disney+, I highly recommend you do so. And if Dave Filoni has any plans to bring these characters back, if Ahsoka is going to have a season 2, I'm all for it. I'm not opposed. Just keep Filoni in charge of all the Star Wars stuff, please, because you're going to keep getting great content like this. I'm going to give Ahsoka an A. The hardcores may not agree with me and think of this series as glowingly as I do, but I think it's a really good time to be a Star Wars fan. Ahsoka is the best series that they've put out on Disney Plus since The Mandalorian, and I can't wait to see more out of this universe. Let me know what you thought of Ahsoka down in the comments section below. Who is your favorite character? It can be from the Skywalker saga, it can be from the Rebels saga. Guys, I love discussing all things geeky, all things in television and entertainment over here on the regular, all things Star Wars. You're gonna find it right here. So do consider subscribing and tap on that thumbs up. It's a great community over here, and y'all are invited to the party. Guys, y'all are the best. Stay tuned for more videos very soon. Can't wait to announce the rest of my Halloween special as we trudge through the rest of the month of October. It's gonna be a fun ride, guys. I hope to have you guys along for it. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence.